I'm sure we've seen quite a lot of headlines that have hinted that the former Chief Justice of the Constitutional Court of South Africa, Mogoeng Mogoeng, might be running for presidency in the next elections of 2024. In fact, he has once said something during a service. I think it was a conference or something, but I can't really remember that name of the organization. But anyway, he once mentioned something that he is looking into running for presidency. And in that, he was even saying that to the people who were praying that he becomes president, they shouldn't limit God to the 2024 elections, but they should pray that if the Lord wants Mogoeng Mogoeng to become a president, they should at least pray for a longer period for the next or even the later elections. So there's an article that I've read recently. I think it was from either News 24 or another channel. I'm not so sure. I think it was City Press. I think it's the same thing as News 24. But anyway, on the article, he mentioned that he's not planning to run for elections because he hasn't heard from the Lord. Right. And in that sense, unless he hears from the Lord, then he would run. And the article, I can't really remember. I think it might have hinted along the lines that the reason why he wouldn't be running is because he doesn't want someone funding him, right? Someone giving him money. And he said this because he once said something that he believes that there's nothing as a free meal in politics, right? If someone gives you something, they expect something in return, right? And I think it was with reference to the to the Ramaphosa, the current president. It was in regards to his campaign for his presidency. But I can't really remember in what context Mogoeng Mogoeng said this. So the question then is, would it be a good thing for Mogoeng Mogoeng to become a president? More specifically for Christians, basically. Well, I have a yes and a no answer to the question. Well, let's start with a yes, right? Yes would be yes, in the sense that we would have a president, right, that is Christian. A president that is, basically a Christian president. But above all things, we would expect less corruption, in fact, zero corruption in his cabinet and in his entire political, his cabinet, basically, or his administration. I think that's the word I was looking for, right? We would expect zero corruption, and I think we would expect quite a lot of things to go in order, given how rooted he is in his Christian beliefs, right? But the answer then also becomes no, in the sense that I do think Mogoeng Mogoeng wouldn't run the country the way Christians would expect him to. And that's mainly because of the judgment he made in 2019, where he was penning down the judgment for the majority, right? And there he found the biblical practice of not sparing the rod for a child, right? Basically punishing your child or beating your children for the sake of setting them on the right path for God. He found that unconstitutional, right? And his reasoning were because this can result in abuse, right, of children. So that's one main reason why I think Mogoeng wouldn't decide in such a manner that Christians would expect him to. And that would create quite a lot of conflict because Christians would expect quite a lot from a Christian president, in the sense that ACDP, as the Christian political party, has quite a lot of policies that align with what Christians would want, such as policies on abortion, policies on marriage, policies on quite a lot of things that Christians would want to have there, right? And in this case, I'm not so sure about Mogoeng Mogoeng. In fact, I once remember when he got in trouble in 2014. So he had a lecture in Stellenbosch where he said he doesn't think that the religion, that the law of the country should be separate from religion, right? And that was his stance on the situation. And he got in trouble. The media got to it so quickly, in a sense that the narrative was twisted as a whole, and they made it like Mogoeng wants to make South Africa a Christian nation, right? He wants to turn South Africa into a Christian nation. So basically, in the concept of today, it would be Christian nationalism, right? And Mogoeng Mogoeng came out in public and he sort of explained the situation that no, he believes that the constitution is the rule of the document that rules this country, and he's not planning to subject the country or even anything to the Bible. And I think they once asked him on that case of, in that interview, I'm not so sure, don't quote me on this. I think they asked him on the issue of the LGBT, how he would decide if a matter comes before him that relates to that. And he answered, because they asked that question because they knew his belief on the subject of the LGBT, right? And since they knew his beliefs and he was pressed on this, or cornered or just questioned on this when he was being interviewed for the position of the Chief Justice, right? So the media ran with this as well, again with him, and his answer was he would decide in the way that the Constitution requires, right? And it ended there. So before, just to speed you up, since I've mentioned the interview, so before, I think he was dealing with the matter, and in this matter, I'm not so sure because I've never actually came across exactly what the matter was and what he was dealing with. But there was an issue of homosexuality that he did not address as the judge who was sitting on the bench, right? He did not address this specific matter. And as such, it led to the guys who were interviewing him to see him as someone who was not so much for the social justice at the time and all that. But basically, those are my reasons for why. I mean, I would prefer that he becomes a president, and if he does, I mean, I would love that he does it without a political party. I think it's a great idea that he wants to do it without being sponsored, right? And the question of whether or not, if he's not sponsored, where is he going to get the money from to campaign? Well, where the Lord is involved, nothing is impossible, right? So in that case, I wouldn't have to worry about that. I mean, the Lord would have, if he wants him as a president, things would happen the way the Lord wants them to happen. But secondly, I don't think Mogoeng would side with us, and that's the biggest concern I always have, is that he wouldn't side with what is religious, because as a Christian, if you believe that God's law is perfect and it's a law that is good for everyone, then you would do everything in your power to make sure that people are governed by those laws, right? Because Mogoeng, I mean, he's a charismatic, so he spends most of his time in the Old Testament, and he would know what are the consequences of not complying with the law of God, right, in the Old Testament. And I think even in this case, as much as we are the Christians, no longer Jews, I think the principle still applies. If a nation becomes immoral, if a nation becomes depraved, basically, it would be expected that the leader calls those people into line, right? And I think Mogoeng would make a good president, but I just have these issues with him because we have certain expectations as Christian from a Christian president. Yeah, I hope you really enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you on the next one. If you like it, please hit the like button, and if you like the content in this channel, then hit the subscribe button. I'll see you next time. Thank you.